Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's tutorial, we're going to be learning how to make this dress that you see on my sister. Couldn't get a video, so we're just going to make do with the pictures. If you're a returning subscriber, thank you so much for coming back. If you're a new subscriber, you are more than welcome. Thank you for joining the club. Without wasting your time, let's get straight into the video. So as you can see, I have my pattern paper already. Now I'm going to proceed to draw out a starting line at the top of the paper, and that is where every other measurement will be taken from. Afterwards, I'm going to proceed to mark 2 inches from the starting line. That is going to be the casing area, which we're going to pass our ropes by the time we're sewing this dress. So once I'm done with that, I'm going to really line on the 2-inch marked point. Now I'm going to go ahead to cut out the line that I drew, and I said was the starting line, so we don't get confused in the course of the video. And once I'm done with that, I'm going to fold in the 2 inches. Remember, I said it's a channel for which we're going to pass the rope at the bust area, so I'm just going to fold that in and then proceed to take every other measurement. So I'm going to leave out 6 inches before I take out any other measurement. If you looked at the dress properly, you'd see that it was kind of an off shoulder, hence why I'm leaving 6 inches. So you can decide to leave 6.5, 7 inches, depends on how low you want it to be. And afterwards, I went ahead to mark the bust measurements, under bust, and the half length. Now the next thing I'm going to do is mark the shoulder measurements divided by 2. Afterwards, I'm going to mark the armhole measurements, then proceed to draw a straight line. So that is going to become the chest line. Now after I'm done doing that, on that line, I'm going to remark the shoulder measurements divided by 2 so I can connect it to the top. Now the next thing I'm going to do is to mark the nipple to nipple measurements divided by 2, and I'm going to mark it all the way from the waistline up to the bust line. Afterwards, I'm going to draw a line, and on both sides of the straight line that I just drew out, I'm going to mark 0.5 inch and draw out my darts. Now the next thing I'm going to do is go upward by 1 inch on the under bust line, and on the armhole line I'm going to go inward by 1 inch at the midpoint. And the reason why we're going inward by 1 inch is because half an inch is going to be used to attach the sleeves and half an inch is going to be used to attach the cups, so you would understand that in the process of the video. I'm going to go ahead to use my curve ruler to connect each point. You can use your free hand to do this, whatever the case may be, so just watch closely to see where each point is meeting. So after drawing out the cup, the next thing we're going to do now is to mark out the round body measurement. So on the bust line, I'm going to mark the round bust measurement divided by 4, and I'll be adding 1 inch sewing allowance. On the waistline as well, I'm going to mark the round waist measurement divided by 4, put the 1 inch that I took out for the dart, and also add 1 inch sewing allowance. And then I'm going to proceed to use my ruler to connect all of these points. I'm just going to go ahead now to draw out the armhole curve, and that is basically all for this front pattern. So let's go ahead and cut out. Now before we cut out the cup from the front pattern, we're going to use this to trace out the back. So I went ahead to mark 1 inch zipper allowance on a fresh piece of paper, and I placed the front pattern on it, leaving ½ inch at the top of the back pattern. And still yet, remember that the 2 inches we kept for the rope casing is still folded in. So I'm just going to go ahead now to trace this out. Don't forget to mark your darts, or you make a notch so you know where your dart is meant to be. Now I'm just going to draw my darts on the back pattern, and this time around I'm extending it to the top of the paper. Afterwards, on the waistline, which is the half length, I'm going to go inward by 0.75 inch. This is to avoid zipper bulge, and I will just connect it as a slant line all the way to the top of the paper. Again, to make the dress sit perfectly at the back, we're going to go up by 1 inch on the waistline and connect it to the side. Afterwards, I'm going to cut all of this out and also open up the darts so that by the time I want to cut this out on my main fabric, I'll be cutting it out as one piece. I'm going to be using my sellotape to hold this down. Just as I said earlier, we'll be needing this as one piece. That's basically all for the back pattern. Now to the front pattern, I'm going to go ahead now to cut out the cup. So for the 2 inch that we folded on the side, I'm going to just trim that off. I don't need it there. I'm also going to go ahead to open up the darts and then use my sellotape to hold this down into one piece as well. So for the cup, we're going to be doing the slash and spread method. So I'm just going to divide this 1 inch apart and then use my ruler to draw a straight line on each marked point. I'm so sorry guys, I did not know my phone had stopped recording, so I'm just going to explain how this came about. So after I was done drawing out the lines, I went ahead to number it just to avoid confusion, and then proceeded to cut out each piece. And then on a fresh pattern paper, just as you can see, I placed each piece according to the numbers and I spread them with 1.5 inch apart. After I was done, I taped it down and then proceeded to trace out the cup to give me a perfect shape, just as you can see, and then cut out. That was basically all I did, and I got this. That is basically all for the upper bodice of this dress. I'm just going to go ahead to label the pattern papers. Remember, the center front, we're going to be cutting that on fold. The back, we're going to be cutting 2 pieces as well as the cup. So I'm going to go ahead now to cut this on my fabric, and then we can begin sewing. As you can see, I've gone ahead to cut out the fabric for each pattern piece. I also went ahead to cut out facings for the back piece, which we'll be using to turn the neckline. Then for the center front, I cut out 2. One would serve as the lining, and then the cup we have just 2 pieces. I made a notch where we had folded the 2 inches for the rope casing. So what I'm going to do now is sew the center part of this cup with 1/2 inch and then fold the casing. So I'm going to fold first with 1/2 inch, then fold again with about 1 inch. All right, so I'm going to go ahead to do that now and come back to show you what next to do. As you can see, I've gone ahead to sew the casing. I also sewed the center part of the cup as said. I went ahead to pass in my rope. This rope measurement is not, you can just cut, as long or as short as you'd want it to be, and then pass it through the casing with your safety pin. So that was what I went ahead to do. Now we're going to have this cup fit into the center front. Okay, remember we did the slash and spread method, so we're going to definitely have gathers on this cup in order for us to get the exact measurement. I'm going to go ahead now to pin the cup until the center front, leaving 1/2 inch at the top. Just watch closely at how I'm going to pin this all the way to the midpoint of the center front, and the same is going to go for the other side of the cup, and we're going to stitch down with 1/2 inch. You can see I'm done attaching the cup. Now the next thing we're going to do is to turn this with the lining. So I'm going to turn this to the right side just as you've seen, and then we're going to put the cup inside and then take the other piece which is going to serve as the lining and just follow it through. Okay, so watch closely what I'm doing, and that is how we're going to stitch it down with 1/2 inch as well. is done, you're also going to go ahead to sew the sides with 1/2 inch and then turn it to the right side. Do it for both sides. Now moving on to the back piece, I'm just going to place the facing on the neck part and then stitch with 1/2 inch and just flip it over, press it down with my iron. That's basically what we're going to do for now. So I'm going to go ahead to do all of this and then come back to show you the next step. Here it is. As you can see, I've gone ahead to do all that I said. I used the lining to turn the front piece. Also did the same for the back piece with the facing, plus the sides of the front. So now we're going to keep this aside and move on to the lower part of this dress. So we're done with the upper part of this dress. Now to the lower part, I have my fabric on fold and the width that I have here is 18 inches. If you want it wider, you can go ahead to do so depending on how full you want the lower part to be. The length of this lower part of the dress is 40 inches plus 1 inch allowance for folding and joining at the waistline. So now from the top of the fabric, which I'll be using as the waistline, I'm going to mark the hip length measurement, which is 9 inches. So go ahead to mark out your appropriate measurement. So on the waistline, I'm going to mark the waist measurement divided by 4. And because this dress is going to have a slit, I'm going to add 1 inch, which is also going to serve as the sewing allowance. And then on the hip line as well, I'm going to mark the hip measurement divided by 4. And I'll be adding 2 inches, 1 inch for sewing allowance and 1 inch for ease. And I'm just going to go ahead to connect that to the waistline. And then from the hip line, I'm just going to connect it all the way to the hem. Afterwards, I'm going to proceed to cut out. So I went ahead to use the front piece to cut out the back piece, and it is exactly the same. Reason being that I already added 1 inch to the front because of the slit that is going to be at the front. So that 1 inch now is going to serve as the zipper allowance for the back. I hope you guys understand that. Then at the hem, I also went ahead to, just give it a slight curve. So from the side, I went up by 1 inch and then just gave it a curve so it won't just be sharp, by the time we're done sewing on the floor. The next thing to do now is to place each of the back piece, upper bodies to lower bodies, right sides facing each other, and head over to the machine to join that with 1/2 inch. You'll notice that there's going to be a 0.5 inch excess. You're going to trim that off to avoid excess bulge because we did that while we were drafting on the pattern, so we have to do the same thing to the lower bodies. Now for the front piece, I'm going to mark the nipple to nipple measurement and add 1 inch to it from the center front, and I will mark that all the way from the waistline to the hem of this front piece. So I'm going to open this fabric up and then cut open where I just marked. And then I'm going to place it right sides facing each other, take it to the machine and sew with the 1 inch that I had kept initially for the slit. And then from the waistline, I'm going to mark 17 inches. So that is where I'm going to stop my sewing at, and the rest is going to be the opening for the slit. So you can do more or do less depending on what's going to be comfortable for you. And after ironing, I'm going to go ahead to fold the slit. As you can see here, I am done with the slit making. Now the next thing to do is to place the upper bodies for the front directly on the lower bodies, right sides facing each other, and we're just going to join it with 1/2 inch. So as you can see here, the front piece is totally ready. See the slit looking all nice. I joined the upper bodies to the lower bodies as well. Now the next thing to do is to place the back piece onto the front piece, right sides facing facing each other, and we're going to sew the sides from the armhole down to the hem. Sure, when you're joining the front and the back together, the waistline meets. That way you know that you've been doing the right thing so far. After that is done, I'm going to go ahead to close the center back up to the point where I want my zipper to end. So my zip, I'm going to be leaving 17 inches to fix my zip. So once I'm done with all of that, I'm going to come back to show you what it looks like. So this is the dress all set, zipper fixed. What is left now is to attach the sleeve. So let's go ahead to cut out the sleeve. So I have the fabric cut out already. I'm so sorry, I did not know that my camera angle was not angling at all. But anyways, the dimension of the fabric is 12 inches by 12 inches. So I'm going to be taking out 1.5 inch at the top of the fabric for the sleeve, which is what I'm going to use for the elastic casing at the top and at the bottom. And then on the side, I'm just going to mark half an inch, which is what I am going to use to close the side of the sleeve. You can see that I have both fabrics on top of each other, which means I'm going to be cutting both sleeves at the same time. So what I'm going to do now is take the measurement of the armhole of the dress, and then I will just place it towards the open part of the fabric for the sleeve. So I'm going to place the armhole of the dress, leaving the 1.5 inch at the top and the half inch on the side. So you can see that, and I will just go ahead to trace and cut out with my scissors. So I'm going to go ahead now to fold the 1.5 inch allowance that I kept. I'm going to fold the top, fold the bottom, enough to have my elastic pass through. So as you can see, I've gone ahead to sew the upper and the lower part of the sleeve. Now I also went ahead to cut out my elastic. So the measurement for the elastic will be passing into this. For the lower part, just go ahead to measure your round bicep and subtract 2 inches from it. And then for the upper part, you can use anything between 6 and 7 inches. It works just fine. So I'm going to go ahead now to pass in the elastic, and remember to stitch once you get to either of the edges, so the elastic does not go inside and then you have to go through the same process again. So now that I'm done passing the elastic, I'm just going to head over to my machine and close up the side with the half inch that I kept earlier, and I'm going to repeat the same process for the other sleeve. So once you're done sewing the side of the sleeve, just go ahead to attach it to your dress and your Milkmaid dress is ready. That is pretty all for the sewing tutorial of this dress. Thank you guys so much for watching. Do not forget to like, share, and most importantly, if you're just coming across the channel for the first time and you like my videos, please subscribe. It won't do no harm. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section and I'll be more than happy to respond to you guys. Until next time, bye.